Good evening, everyone. This is the last seminar for this semester. So today we have with us Vidya Venkatesh, the director of the Last Wilderness Foundation. Vidya has dedicated her work to developing sustainable solutions that balance the need of both human and wildlife, especially within indigenous and local communities. Her efforts focus on reducing the negative impact of human-wildlife interaction as well as empowering the community to actively participate in protecting their natural environments. In addition to her work in various tiger reserve, national parks and wildlife sanctuaries, Vidya was also a key member of Mumbaikars for the Sanjay Gandhi National Park project, where she played a vital role in creating citizen-driven initiative that tackle the human leopard conflicts in Mumbai. So please join me in welcoming Vidya Venkatesh.
Do I need to use the mic?
Please.
Yes. Hello. Hi. A very good evening to everybody and belated Happy Diwali to all. I get to know that most of you are in the campus, and then you are looking forward to a very long vacation. So quickly, thank you for the introduction, for the detailed introduction. I have been working with communities around protected areas for about a decade plus now, almost a decade and a half now. A lot of what I will be talking today comes from the experience that I've brought in from the work that we've been doing. The organization name that I work for is called Last Wilderness Foundation, and the work that we've been doing is all about human-wildlife coexistence. So I bring to you today some of the experiences that we have gone through. Myself, my colleague is here, Gaurav, Kedar is also here. We've gone through a lot of experience in the rural setup. I will be talking about rural setup as well as urban setup, and I think you already would probably be able to relate to what urban setup is all about, coexistence in urban setup is all about. Some of the rural experiences that we will talk about today is a lot of, I would say, some of them are hard-hitting facts, some of them are statements which we don't have answers for, we still are trying to figure out. But yes, this is a situation that is there on ground. So I'm just going to start by showing you a map. This is a map of Central India, or rather Madhya Pradesh, where we work, our organization works. Are you all able to see the map? I know it's not very detailed, but I will tell you what I'm trying to show you from here. Does the mouse work? Yeah. So the pink colored areas that you see, they're all protected areas, right? All these pink ones are all protected areas. And the green lines that you see in between, the darker the green color, these are all wildlife corridors. So when we say wildlife corridors, there could be animal movement between these places or between these protected areas. Darker the green, better the corridor. Lighter the green, weaker the corridor, and greys are where we don't have much corridors existing. We will talk about, there is Satpura, there is Kanha, there is Bandhavgarh. Yeah, and there is Puno and there is Puno. So a whole lot of protected areas that you see. Now, India is well networked in terms of trying to, if you look at the map, there is a lot of scattered protected areas here and there. And when we say protected areas, it's either national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, tiger reserves, reserve forests, and all of those. The situation between these places and why we're talking about places in between these protected areas is because unless we have a very healthy movement of population from one area to another, it is not going to be sustainable from a conservation perspective. So species will not be able to sustain itself within a very limited landscape or a very limited area. So the movement of the species is extremely important. So the whole focus in today's world in India is not about just protecting the protected area, but it's also about making the corridors safe. So when we are talking about making corridors safe, the corridor area, if you realize, is not something where we see only forest. Okay, there's another park. That's not how it is, right? There's going to be cities, there are going to be railway tracks, there are going to be highways, national highways, 4-lane highways, and all of it. So there are a whole lot of development that has happened in the protected area, in between the protected area where we call it as corridor. And those are areas where we are trying to make it safe or a safe passage for wildlife to move from one place to another. So these corridors are something now that India is also trying to focus on, saying how do we make the corridors very safe. So just to talk about Madhya Pradesh where we work, the human population is about 8.7 crores. It's the highest state or the state with the highest number of tigers, leopards, gharials, vultures, and now cheetahs, of course, have also come in there. So it is a state which has managed to sustain a lot of its large mammal population, as well as gharials, as well as vultures, of course. Cheetahs have been introduced now. Within Madhya Pradesh, one of the tiger reserves, most of you would have heard about Bandhavgarh, right? So Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve is one of the most popular, most known, well-known tiger reserve. And most of you heard of it? Anyone who's heard of it? Bandhavgarh? Okay. Alright. So Bandhavgarh is somewhere on the eastern Madhya Pradesh, and it also has one of the highest number of tigers in Madhya Pradesh. Very high density actually. The number of villages around Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve is approximately 100-150. These are the number of villages that I'm talking about, next to the Tiger Reserve. Some villages are still in the core area as well. 63 incidents of tiger movement in human-dominated areas between 2022-23. That's about a 1 year of data I'm sharing with you. 16 fatalities have been documented due to tiger attack within 2 years. Now here I'm trying to share the data between wild animals and the human population that live next to the park. On an average, about 2,800 cattle get killed every year or preyed upon every year by the tigers. Huge crop damage and threats to human life due to wild herbivores. So this is something that people also face. There are also reverse repercussions that happen where people also venture into the forest. We will also talk about that. But for just general knowledge, I'm sure many of you would know about it. Tigers are territorial animals, and when we talk about territories, how do they form a territory? So pretty much a territory is formed by roti kapda makan, and when we say roti kapda makan for a tiger, it is food, water and shelter. So we're talking about enough number of preys, there is shelter that is available, and there is water that will be available. So these are the three things that determine the range of any tiger pretty much. It's probably the same for leopards as well, but it's a little more different. I mean, it's slightly different. But this is how the tiger's territory works. So the tiger usually will look for all of this and then form its territory. But at the same time, while I mentioned saying when humans enter the forest and there is a negative interaction between humans and wildlife or destruction due to human intervention, there could be things where the herbivore population goes down. Right? Suddenly you see herbivore population is going down. Reasons could be multiple. It could be poaching, it could be overgrazing of cattle in the forest, due to which the wild herbivore population goes down. There could be multiple reasons. But when the herbivore population goes down, the tiger suddenly realizes, oh, there's not enough prey for me. And then it's going to widen or enlarge its territory. And when this happens, invariably it is going to probably touch upon a village which is close by, right? Because there is already ready prey available, easy cattle prey available in a village. Almost every village in India will have cattle. So this is how the territories start getting expanded over a period of time towards the villages also. Now this is just one village, part of the village that came for one of the movie screenings. Sheer number of head count, number of human beings that live around the park is humongous. Okay, so we are talking about animals, wild tiger trying to venture into a village like this. Just imagine the ruckus that it can create and the chaos it can have. So this is what happens when there are negative interactions between humans and wildlife. There's nilgai, which is raiding a crop next to the tiger reserve. Here there is an electric wire on the left bottom that you see. There's a tiger which is electrocuted, but before that there's a barking deer which has been electrocuted. And probably a barking deer was trying to get into one of the fields or probably being chased by a tiger. And it hit a fence, which was probably a fence which was electrified by the farmer to protect his farm from being crop raided, and both these animals got electrocuted. Okay, it's extremely sad. But of course, a tiger killing a cattle is a very common sight out there. That's a human being killed by a tiger. And the top image where you see the fence is broken down, that's a new phenomenon in Bandhavgarh now and in MP actually, not just Bandhavgarh, it's in MP. Can you guess? I'm sure it's written out there. The elephants, right? So elephants have recently, for about 6 years, the elephants have started entering Madhya Pradesh and started living there. I mean, they started entering 8 years back, but they've now started living in Madhya Pradesh. They were earlier not there, and this is an event that has happened probably almost after 100 years of no elephant in the area. So the state does not know how to live with elephants. Since about 100 years, they didn't have elephants, and they've now started coming. So yeah, the destruction is done by the elephants out there. Eventually, when these situations arise and when there's a tiger which enters a village and there is a chaos or there is a kill that happens, the forest department is pressurized to get the animal away from here, and when that happens, the animal is put behind bars. Right? We would have heard many a time saying the leopard or the tiger has been captured and they've been taken away. But what happens when the tiger is captured? Right? So we're talking about a tiger who has a territory in a particular area. Suddenly the tiger is taken away, and then that area is vacant. And you remember the slide that I showed you where I said roti kapda makan hai wahan par. Only the tiger is not there. So because it's a viable area, it's a feasible area for another tiger to be there, this time instead of one tiger, there are going to be 3 tigers in that area. And how do you think the conflict is going to be after this? Right, so it's going to increase. Because now there are instead of one tiger who knew its territory, who knew the area, now there are 3 tigers who are living in that same area, and they're going to fight for everything, all the resources available there. Like I said, people in the villages, this is a situation where we were in the village when the tiger entered a village, and these many people gathered. Can you guess why? Any guesses? Why do you think the people gathered? Because the tiger was there in somebody's house or in somebody's field. No, they didn't come to kill the tiger. It was very, very... No, it wasn't on social media. It was simple curiosity. They all wanted to see a tiger. So in Bandhavgarh, this is a village in Bandhavgarh, people of the village had not seen a tiger ever. Okay? And it was simple curiosity, and people actually call their relatives from Katni, from Umaria, from different places, and bus mein bhar ke aaye ho. So ये बस में भर के आए हुए लोग हैं यहाँ पर who just came out of curiosity saying tiger कैसे दिखता है दीदी हमने कभी देखा नहीं है. He is standing at one end trying to manage the crowd, I'm standing at the other end trying to manage the crowd. Like आप लोग क्यों आए हो? बच्चे को हाथ में लेके क्यों आए हो? दीदी टाइगर को भी देखा नहीं, बाघ को भी देखा नहीं हमने. I'm like, man, this is not the time to see a tiger, right? But anyway, yeah, this is the situation on ground. At the same time, there is also a lot of influence from our culture which comes in terms of revering the tiger. So in different parts of the country, we call it Baghoba, we call it Baghesur. In MP, we call it Baghesur. People call it Baghesur. So they worship the tiger, they make a statue out of tiger, and they worship it. So that kind of a, what do you call, belief, trust is already there within our culture. Right? So that kind of, I feel and I always believe that that kind of helps a lot in trying to work on conservation. So in India, that's one of the biggest tool that we have and the biggest plus point that we have for conservation, wildlife conservation. Like I mentioned recently, elephants have come. Elephants recolonized Bandhavgarh, and this is an old news about 2022. They've probably been coming for about 5-6 years and they've been staying there. But this is the news that comes in saying, after more than a century, elephants have returned to Bandhavgarh. So they came through Chhattisgarh area. We don't know why, how, what made them come here, we don't know. But they've now colonized Bandhavgarh. There are 2 different herds over there, 2 or 3 herds. They've moved around in the area and stuff. Unfortunately, in the last 5-6 years, this recent news, I don't know if any of you have read it. In the last 6 days, there have been 3 human deaths in one single place where the elephants have caused those 3 deaths. But before those 3 human deaths, what actually happened, this is a video, and this is the elephant trampling the human being. But before that, what actually happened a day before this entire trampling event was 10 elephants died. Okay, 10 elephants have died. And we still don't know why, how, but the incident that happened was they went into a crop, they raided a crop field. It was kodo and kutki, the millets, if you've heard about kodo and kutki. They ate enough of the kodo and kutki millets, and 7 of them died on the spot. 3 of them were unwell. Following 2 days, the rest of the 3 also died. The herd was a herd of 13 elephants. 10 of them have died. 3 of them went away. They went to another district which is called as Shahdol. There they actually went and trampled those 3 human beings that I was talking about. So these are series of incidents or events that have happened in the past 6 days. If you Google, you'll be able to figure out a lot of this that has transpired. One of the theories is that probably there is a fungal infection on the millets that has come up because of the untimely rains that happened recently. The other story is, of course, it could be a case of extra additional pesticides that probably would have been sprayed on them. We don't know. It's unlikely to be a case of poisoning really, but it's mostly one of these 2 and the postmortem report is yet to come. But yeah, this is how grave it can be from both sides. Of course, the field director and the SDO have been suspended because of the investigation. There's a committee which was set up. But like I mentioned, apart from all of this, this is just the elephant part. Coming back to the tiger part, many of our areas that we work in, we've seen food traps being laid. We've seen different kinds of interaction, negative interaction that happen, and we don't know whether it is, like I said, so we showed you the electrocution case where the farmer had laid fence around his field because he wanted to protect his crop. Many a time they do this for wild boars also. They also set traps, they also set food traps, so they set up different traps for wild boars, not to raid the crop, but a tiger unfortunately or any other mammal can actually get stuck into it. So it's a matter of whether he should survive or he should protect his crop, or whether he should be a pro-wildlife or not put up anything to harm the wildlife. So it's a question mark. The other pressure that is put on the forest is overgrazing by the cattle that is living in the villages. For them, easy fodder land is the forest area. So most cattle, like we work in places like Gandhi Sagar or in Puno where we're working, most of them are Gurjars and cattle herders. The number of cattle is probably like what? 5 times of the human beings in that area. Right? So it's humongous, and the pressure on the forest is as much, and none of them are really going to be stall feeding. They're all going to be free grazing or free ranging cattle. So they all enter the forest, and the grazing that happens because of the cattle, the same area, the herbivores are going to vacate the area. They're not going to be able to graze. They'll be disturbed, and they're going to move out. The other NTFPs, non-timber forest products that villagers collect, You see, mahua is one of the biggest, most expensive, most important product in central Indian landscape. Firewood, of course, every household needs firewood. Those are tendu, but ye tendu patta hai. Those are, I think, the seeds. They extract oil out of it. So that is also one of the products. Forest fire is another biggest threat in certain areas where it's very, very dry, like northern MP, where Panna, Puno or any other landscape is very dry. Villagers try to light fire because of mahua also. I mean, we know people lighting fire because of the stubble that is there and they want to clear it. But in these areas, people also light fire because they want to clear the ground where the mahua tree stands. Because when the mahua flowers fall, they want the ground to be clear and they can just pick it up. The white flowers can be picked up easily. Against the black background of burnt foliage. So they burn the grass and then they leave it overnight and the fire just enters the forest. So that is one of the common incidents that happen. Of course, poaching is one of the other threats that are there. So human-wildlife coexistence really is a two-way, or I would say is a multi-pronged approach. There is no one single answer for any of these questions that we have, because both sides of the coin have a story to say and both sides are right in their own way. But the way we've been working on this is trying to understand the requirements, communication with the stakeholders, because there are multiple stakeholders and we'll also talk about it later. Studying the region and its local people is extremely important because the habits, the behaviors, the culture that the local people have, it is absolutely important for us to understand that before we try to work on any of the conservation mechanisms. So that's one of the most important steps, to understand the local culture of people who live there. Trust building with the locals, setting milestones for the project, of course, finding suitable partners for the project, execution, monitoring and evaluation, and the cycle goes on. So this is primarily how we've been working for most of our projects across the landscape. Engagement with local communities is a large part of what we do, because we believe that wildlife conservation alone, working with wild animals or habitat, may not be helpful. We also need to work with the human beings who live around the park, they're part of the ecosystem. So engaging with local communities is extremely important. Again, working with local communities would mean different programs being designed for different problems, and we've done that in a very detailed way based on the issue which is existing in every park. Outreach and awareness programs, prevention of forest fires. So in areas which is dry area, we work on prevention of forest fires. Snake bite death mitigation is another area where Kedar helps us to work with people where there is a large number of snake bite deaths that happen. Promoting human-wildlife coexistence, increasing the knowledge about conservation amongst rural audience, and nature education camps, because like I said, many of those people do not even know how a tiger looks like. So when you put up our posters, many times these kids will come and ask, "Didi, baag aisa dikhta hai." So they don't know how a tiger looks like. Pretty much we assume while sitting in cities saying that dekha hoga, mane to dekha hi hoga. They're living next to the tiger reserve. Of course they would have seen a tiger, but most of them have not seen a tiger. So this is the engagement that we have with villagers. Here is the then field director of Panna National Park who's interacting with the villagers' kids. This is Bandhavgarh, that is field director of Bandhavgarh National Park who's interacting with the kids. The image where you can see one old man standing, this person, very interesting, his name is Bolu Singh, and I hope he's still alive. He was 95 plus at that time when we met him about a couple of years back. He had never seen a tiger in his life, and his only wish in life was to see a tiger. So when we were doing a village kids awareness program, he requested us saying, "एक बार मुझे park ले जाइए, एक बार मुझे बाग दिखा दीजिए." And we actually took him to the park. Unfortunately, the day we took him to the safari, we did not see a tiger. We did not get a tiger sighting, but we ensured we took him again the next morning, because we really didn't know next time when we come whether he'll be there. So next morning again we took him, and the next morning he saw Rajvera, which is one female tigress with 4 cubs. So he got to see 5 tigers the next morning, and he was extremely thrilled after seeing that. He's like, "अब मैं जा सकता हूँ." So that is the sentiment, emotion that people around these parks have about animals living there. Outreach and awareness. This is a fire awareness program that we conduct every year in most of these parks that we work in. And prevention of fire is one of the biggest job roles that the forest department has, but they really find it very tough to convince people saying aag mat lagao, because it's so forest department finds it very tough because they can't have the stick and the carrot at the same time, right? So they can't be good cop and the bad cop at the same time. So वो लोग कहीं POR कर रहे हैं, which is like an FIR in the forest department, it's called POR. So when they actually find people or actually tell people not to go into the forest, right, and they would have probably done some penalty seeking from some of the villagers, next morning they can't go and tell them, look, please don't, light fire. The villagers are not going to listen to that person. So it's a very difficult task that they have in hand. So they obviously need a third party who can be a middle person who can come and talk, which is a neutral tone, saying that why they should not be lighting a fire, how does it impact their own lives and stuff like that. So outreach awareness is one of the biggest components for prevention of fire. In fact, this year we had a very good success that Bandhavgarh did not have a single fire after about so many years, I think.
5-6 years.
Yeah, so they didn't have a single fire incident this year in Bandhavgarh, which was a huge success. Capacity building for the forest department. Forest department is also another organization like any other organization. They don't have too many programs for their own development. So we realized that there is a lot of need for soft skill building within the organization also. So we try and identify soft skill needs within the organization in every area, and we're trying to work it through a program called as Meri Beat Mera Abhiman. So that's another program that we run with the forest department. Gram Rakshak is another interesting project that we run in Panna and now in Bandhavgarh as well. So like I said, the corridors that you all had seen, right? So, okay, how many of us know the story of Panna tigers? Anybody's heard? Pankaj, you can't put your hands up. Anybody's heard about Panna Tiger Reserve at all? Panna. Do you all know the history of Panna Tiger Reserve? Oh. So just quickly, Panna had lost all its tigers in about 2007-2008, and it had lost its tigers to poaching. So there were 0 tigers. So Panna and Sariska were 2 tiger reserves in India, where the tigers had gone extinct. Madhya Pradesh Forest Department decided to reintroduce tigers in 2009 onwards. They started working on a project called as reintroduction of tigers. You can Google and figure out that story. But when they started reintroducing tigers, of course, there are certain communities who were living there who were actually poaching the tigers there. So they also had to work with them. But 2009 onwards, if you see the efforts that the forest department, NGOs and everybody in the administration has put in, today we've got more than 75 plus tigers in Panna. And that's a huge success story worldwide. It has never ever happened. So this is a huge success story that we have in India. While we are very proud of the fact that Panna now has 75 tigers, we also know they are going to start dispersing. They're not going to live in that, they're not going to be contained in that area, right? So they're going to start dispersing. So the surrounding areas where they're going to start dispersing from, those are villages where we need to give them the safe passage. So that is where we are talking about safe wildlife corridor. So we've been working with the villages that are on the path of the corridor, wildlife corridor, especially, and there are multiple pathways. One of the pathways connects Panna Tiger Reserve to another Ranipur Wildlife Sanctuary, now it's a tiger reserve in UP. And Panna is a border, it's northmost part of MP, so it borders UP, and there is a corridor between Panna and Ranipur. So that corridor is where we are working in, and the villages that are there, we kind of select certain people from the villages who can be networking with us, they can be informers, they can be action-oriented people, activists. Villagers will listen to them in case there is a tiger or any other animal which is coming to the village. So appointing these people from those villages where the wildlife corridor begins is something that we have designed this program known as Gram Rakshak. So Gram Rakshak is more for protection of the people and we're not talking about angle of protection of the animal because forest department does that. But गाँव वालों की रक्षा के लिए जो गाँव वाला काम कर रहा है, this is called Gram Rakshak. And this network is being really nice. We've now had about 25 to 30 villages who are working with us. Snakebite death mitigation, like I said, is another important angle where human-wildlife conflict, one of the largest deaths that we see in India, about 50 to 60,000 every year. is due to snake bites. And hardly people talk about it, but this is one of the largest impacted wildlife conflicts that we have. So we work with not only villagers, we also work with doctors over there, we work with the forest department, trying to mitigate any kind of death, because snake bites is inevitable, or rather, I won't say inevitable, but it can happen, accident. It can happen when they go to the fields. We ask them to wear boots, we ask them to wear closed footwear, carry torches, all of this, but in spite of that, if there is a snake bite, what should they do about it? Education, formal and informal education is something that we work with, especially in rural India, because the education structure or system is not very good over there. Teachers come to schools, they take the attendance and they go back. So there are stories and stories that I can narrate about schools that are there in rural India. I wish many of us could really help rural schools, but it's a sad state of affairs when you go to some of these areas. So yeah, we work with many of these schools out there. Skill development for alternate livelihoods, especially communities that are dependent on the forest. And like I mentioned, if the communities have to enter the forest for their day-to-day routine or for their livelihoods, then is there a way that we can wean their dependency, or we can reduce their dependency and get them away from the forest? So we work with many of these communities out there, and we want to make sure that it does not hamper the culture that they already have. So knowing their culture is again very important thing. What do they do with their culture? Because we can't give them all sewing machines and say, okay, now you can start stitching, or we can't just train all of them into stitching and say, okay, now you can start stitching. That doesn't work. So we have to really figure out what do they know, what can they do, what do they like to do, and stuff. So a little bit of detail about the tribe that I'm talking about. This particular tribe that you're seeing, they're known as the Bhagwan tribe. And I'm just going to give you a glimpse of this. So that's basically their traditional dance, Bhagwan dance. If you go to any of these forests, you can actually see the Bhagwan dance out there. That's the nagada that they use for their cultural dance. This is how they look like, the Bhagwan men and women. And if you notice something very interesting, both men and women, both of them wear jewelry. Okay, so this is something that really clicked when we kept meeting them for almost a year. It took us a year to break ice with them. They're a very, very shy community. This tribe is extremely shy. And when we started working with them, we realized that the jewelry that they wear is something that they make for themselves. All of them make for themselves. So slowly we started working with that skill of making jewelry. And once we started working with them, we realized that not only the women, but the men also were interested in doing it. And they also started working. The jewelry that you see after, on the picture on the left bottom, is after a year of hard work with them. And now we do have a product like this, which is called as a Bhagwan jewelry. If you Google Bhagwan jewelry, this is the only place in Kanha. There are a couple of villages in Kanha who make this. They're also available online. And it's called as Magical Kanha. And it's now in participation with the forest department. We really stepped out of this project because this is an independent project by itself. So beggars have managed to now source the materials, make it, and also courier it back to the customers or bulk orders, so that they have already been trained and they are now self-sustainable. This is a ranger. This lady is a ranger who's sitting in the middle, and she helps the women out there to kind of market and sell their products as well. Another tribe known as the Parthi tribe. Now, has any of you heard of the Parthi tribe? You've heard. Anybody else? Yes. What have you heard about them? Can you quickly tell me?
They are considered as criminal tribes.
Criminal tribes. Okay.
Yes. They are hunting. Like their occupation is hunting.
What
hunting.
is it? Sorry?
Hunting.
They are into hunting. Yeah. Hunting. So yeah. So you tried.
To like raid the people who are passing through the jungles.
Correct. Correct. Exactly. So they have a they are ill-famed or very not so well known for their good deeds, but mostly known for their bad deeds. They are known for their criminal tribes. They are known as dacoits, or they actually loot people who pass through the forest and near the houses and stuff. But they are also the people who actually killed the tigers in Panna. I was talking about the poaching that happened in Panna, where the tigers went down to zero. So Pardis were the tribe, or Pardi was a tribe which lives, even today they live in Panna, and they were responsible for the extinction of tigers in Panna. So when the reintroduction of tigers were happening, Forest Department had no other choice but to work with this tribe first before they reintroduced tigers. But now continuous process होते रहता था, reintroduce होता था, यहाँ से निकल जाता था. So they had to stop, plug the flow somewhere. So Fase Pardis, so there are multiple subsects of Pardis. There are Cheetah Pardis, there are Fase Pardis, there are Bahelia Pardis or Bael Pardis. So multiple Pardis that you can really look up. Poaching rackets. So this is what they were all known for. And this is again when I'm talking about, these are all 2007, 2008. So you see 2008, Pardi tribe become the biggest threat to wildlife. So this is all back then when you would actually, only hear about them for these stories. Does anybody any kind of sound? Peacock. Yeah? Peacock sound? Sure? Right? Anyone? You're allowed. Woodpecker, it sounds like a woodpecker, but yeah, it's not a woodpecker. It's a bird. Definitely a bird. No? Sure. It's a red spur fowl. And you can see it. And this is exactly how the bird sounds like, okay? This is a common one.
Hyena.
Close. Close. Somebody said hyena. Close.
It's a jackal.
Jackal. Yes, it's a jackal. Right? Okay. So this is another skill that the Pardis have. While we know that they've been poachers, they've been hunters, they've been killing animals, they also had a lot of skill regarding knowledge of the forest. Okay, a lot of these skills they used for hunting and poaching, but all of this was done because they wanted to earn an income for their family. And ultimately, the bottom line was income for the family. They used to do this erstwhile because the Raja Maharajas and the Britishers used to hire them for hunting, as they used to call it game. Right, for a game hunting, they used to hire the Pardis. Subsequently, Wildlife Protection Act came in. Overnight, the hunting that they used to do started becoming poaching. Right, when you start, it becomes illegal and you start selling it for money and it is not allowed. It's called poaching. The same thing if it was done by Raja Maharajas in those erstwhile times, they were called hunting. So it's something which they didn't understand really. Pardis didn't understand what happened overnight. What is Wildlife Protection Act? पहले करते थे तो हमको बुलाते थे, अब हमको मना करते करने के लिए, अब हमको जेल में डालते हैं, हमने क्या गलत कर दिया? So they really couldn't figure out why, what happened, what went, what changed the entire situation. But really, yeah, I mean, they have a lot of skill, they have a lot of knowledge about the forest because they used to live in the forest. They are nomadic tribes. They used to live in the forest and pretty much survived most of these animals that we're talking about. Be it elephant, be it tiger, leopard, all of these animals they've survived through. So they know the tactics, they know how to live through the forest, they knew how to catch them as well. And a lot of these sounds, if you see, they also know how to make these sounds. Most of them are distress calls because they would have heard these animals give out these distress calls. So they know a lot of the calls which are distress calls made by the animals. So with this particular skill set that they had, we really thought what we could do, and we slowly started training them as nature guides. and we brought out a program called as Walk with the Pardhis in Panna. And Walk with the Pardhis is now running for about 6 to 7 years, independent of us. People who go to Panna, apart from seeing the tigers and the leopard, this is another attraction that people love to go to. These are Pardhi kids, right? The adults are, while they are engaged in doing Walk with the Pardhis, we also want the next generation to be getting into mainstreaming or getting into mainstream education. These are kids, none of them go to schools. Why? Because nobody goes to their dera to ask them to come to schools. Why? Because Anganwadi people are scared to go to their deras, and police does not enter their dera because they're scared of getting kidnapped. Okay, doctors don't go. None of this happens, so they're just there. Okay, nobody knows what's happening with them. So really, there are some kids, brilliant kids, and we started a small program called as Pardhi Education Program where we support these kids. Now there are 2 hostels in Panna which the Forest Department and WWF had started way back in 2009. We continue to support that since 2011. We've been supporting those 2 hostels. Those 2 hostels produced about 200 kids who are 8th pass, but that hostel was only up to class 8. So about 200 kids had to drop out. Now those 200 kids are scattered somewhere in the entire central Indian landscape, but they don't know what to do because 8 ke baad kya hota hai na, kuch nahi hota hai. So 2 of these kids that you see, this is a girl, Aseran Bai, and the boy who's in the check shirt, Firdaus, they are now teachers and they teach all of these kids in their own deras. So we've tried to get all those kids, 200 kids back slowly. Now they've been appointed as teachers and they are now trying to teach the kids in their own deras. So that's great, and the kids are brilliant. If you ever get a chance to meet the Pardhi kids, do meet them. Women in the community, they are extremely vocal, very forthcoming. They are more dominating than the men, of course, and they are the decision makers. So if they ask the men not to go for their jobs, they will not go. If they tell the men not to go for hunting, they will not go. If they ask them to leave their jobs and come back, they will come back. So it's very simple, right? So if you get the women into on your side of conservation, then you've done it, right? So that was the key understanding that we had to get over a period of time, saying who are the key target audience for us to work with. So women here are very, very interesting. They also carve out this whistle, which is used for calling out to attract the partridges. The grey francolin, if you have heard grey francolin. So these whistles were used to attract the grey francolin, and they would actually lay out a trap, and the francolins would get trapped, and they would sell a pair for like 300, 400 bucks. So they used to do that earlier. That's a great francolin call, and every kid, every member of the community knows how to play this. They actually pretty much have that whistle around their neck when they just go into the forest walking. They just keep playing it. They find a couple of them, pick it up and go. That's how they used to do. So now we started using that technique or the skill that they have to sell these whistles as souvenirs, because that's the only souvenir of the Pardhi community that you'll ever find anywhere. So it's a Pardhi whistle that we call it. The other thing that they really work with is the beads that you see here. The beads are carved out, and they are carved with symbols of the forest. They've got pug marks, they've got snake, they've got multiple symbols that you can get from the forest, and they're very beautifully carved out. Interestingly, they also make the knife, their own knives for themselves. So they make the knife, they will carve this out, they're skilled in all of this. Beads are also sold as souvenirs from the Pardhi community. And this is all to the tourists, because Panna has a footfall of tourism, because it's a tiger reserve, so they actually engage with the tourists out there. Right now, Panna has more than 75 plus tigers now. That's a huge success to the forest department and of course to the locals out there. Stakeholders we work with, like I mentioned, we work with the forest department of course, but apart from the forest department, wildlife conservation is a lot about the other departments as well. Because there's so much that we need to work with the communities, with the locals. There's revenue department, there's education department, agriculture department, horticulture department, because a lot of livelihoods come from these departments. Animal husbandry, tribal and DNT, because the community that we work with are either SC, ST, DNT or any of these communities. Police department, of course, since tribal communities like Hardis are around the vicinity, police department is a key stakeholder for us. That was all about the rural landscape that we were working with. I will quickly run you through the project in Mumbai that we did, and it's a very different landscape, and I'm not going to take too much time because you might have already heard about Mumbaikars for SGMP. I think there were talks, not yet?
Not on,
Okay.
on the leopard, but that was a year ago. So many of them
Way back. So Mumbai has a lot of leopards, and one of the highest density of leopards in the world is what I understand, right? So having leopards in Mumbai is a pride, of course. IIT campus has leopards, right? Yes? Okay. So the whole project was about trying to have a coexistence model in Mumbai between humans and leopards. This initiative was started in 2011 by the then field director of Sanjay Gandhi National Park, Shri Sunil Limay, and he wanted citizens to participate in the project because he said it's not just forest department's responsibility. Leopard is not just ours; it's entire Bombay's. So why don't Mumbaikars also come in? That's when the Mumbaikars for SGNP started, and living with leopards was the project. A lot of photographers wanted to photograph a leopard in a city environment. And if you see, this is Ranjit's photograph. I don't know why the Ranjit Jadav's photograph. What is the population we are talking about in Mumbai? Saying, can somebody read that number? Okay, whatever. So 2.6 million people in Mumbai, second highest city in the world, and it got 35 leopards minimum in Mumbai.
21 million.
21 million, I'm sorry, 21 million. And we're talking about 35 leopards minimum in Bombay. We could have probably more. So we're just talking about 6,17,000 people per leopard in Mumbai. Okay? And this is what it looks like. So that's the food they eat in Bombay. And because we've got ample of the food that they eat, and it's not just dogs, they eat anything from rats, cats, pigs, to anything that they can get. Okay, they're very, very versatile, they're very dynamic in terms of their prey. And if you haven't seen this video yet, then this is Goregaon East, very close to RML Colony. So probably every night that we pass, there is something like this happening around the national park. But at the same time, we are talking about these kind of situations because the CCTVs are now available, because there are a lot of photographs and videographs that are being taken. A lot of that, of course, I'm not getting into a lot about the biology of leopards, lots that we know about leopards. Quickly, leopards need about one stray dog, on an average about one stray dog per week. So we need about 50 stray dogs per year. I'm talking about estimated stray dog population just in RML colony was about 600. This was part of the study that we did, okay? There were 600 free-ranging dogs in RML colony. So RML currently has a potential up to 12 leopards living there for one whole year without introducing any more population, right? So that much of food is available. Apart from this, of course, there are a huge number of pigs, cats which haven't been counted for. So we've got enough prey base for all these leopards to live in Bombay. Findings, we've gone through this. Sorry, it's a repeat slide. Yeah. So Steve Winter had also come and he wanted to photograph. So this is like some of the beautiful photographs of leopards with a Bombay city in the background. But pretty much what was the project all about was citizen participation. All the camera trap that happened to understand the movement of leopards, where were leopards present, which areas, which was their territory, all of that was done by citizen science. Interaction with the residents around the national park happened, high-rise buildings plus slum areas, all of it was done. A lot of information was being passed on, especially facts and figures were being passed on to the residents. Interaction with schools, because a lot of BMC schools in RA, and those kids are endangered, but at threat because of the movement that they have through tall grasses. Every day they would walk through those tall grasses, so they had to be careful. So precautionary measures that had to be taken had to be told to the parents as well as the kids. Forest department had to be trained in terms of tranquilizing, how to rescue a leopard and so on and so forth. Media workshops were extremely important because a lot of hype that was created about Khukhar Janwar and bloodthirsty animal, a lot of those things were earlier done by the media, but post the media workshops that happened, we really saw a big change coming in. So a lot of mindset change or information through these words that were given out were also tweaked to give out the right amount of information. Role of police in crowd control management, because Bombay, that's one of the most important things when there is a leopard in an area, and I'm sure you would have heard about multiple incidents where leopard entered a mall, leopard entered a school and all of that. But in the last 10 years, you would have probably not heard too many incidents about leopard attacking human beings or entering and having a problem. Most of them have been smooth rescues that have happened. Living with Leopards was that project. IIT was part of the project, and we actually had sessions in IIT back then. I don't know, probably about 4-5 years back, we engaged with IIT also because there were some leopards around here. All right. There is a tiger song. I don't know if you Okay, one last song, and I'm going to close it. So this is a small little song that was made by the kids of Bandhavgarh. It was filmed by a filmmaker, documented filmmaker, but this is what we use for talking about the precautionary measures that need to be taken by people in and around Tiger Reserve. The volume is enough.
It's a night.
Mavish is a cattle. Thank you.
Anyone have question, please?
It's okay. We can just stop it. No, it's not. Any questions, anyone?
So, such a beautiful lecture. Really enjoyed.
Thank you.
So, ma'am, I have two questions. One is regarding there should be corridor for human as well as tiger and other animals. So, in this solution, have you ever you or the committees they have ever thought about GIS kind of approach? And second is once I have privilege to listen to IISc researcher Raman Sukumar, he is elephant expert. So he was saying about lot of things about the changing the psychological mindset of those animals. Like elephant is now becoming more rogue because they are. So is there anything study about those kind of things in Madhya Pradesh region?
So, to answer your first question about GIS, I think there is already a lot of work that is happening through GIS. In fact, most of the work that is happening now around habitat, mapping of corridor, everything is happening through GIS, especially with collaring of animals, tagging of animals, movement, recording of the movement areas, and so on and so forth. At the same time, while you're also saying that humans, hello, better?
Yeah.
So while you're saying humans also have to have corridors, there's been a lot of good work that has happened around trying to integrate human corridors with wild animal corridors. Like the NH7 highway, if you've seen, there have been, it's probably one of its kind in the world where such a long highway with so many wildlife underpasses, all the underpasses that you see under NH7, which is around Nagpur to, where is that? It goes through Jabalpur. No, I don't think it reaches Jabalpur, but it goes via Nagpur. If anybody crosses through Nagpur, you'll see that highway. It has a whole lot of underpasses. That's one of its kind where the government actually changed their whole plan and they built that so that human beings and wild animals can have safe corridors on both sides. GIS has been extremely used in wildlife conservation to monitor movement of animals as well as trying to understand where the corridors can be built safely. Second, you were asking about the behavior of elephants really. I think MP is now probably too nascent stage for MP to understand behavior because the herds that have come, there were very few that came in. Eventually, they've actually given birth to young ones and calves in Madhya Pradesh after they've started staying in Madhya Pradesh, and then now the herd has increased, the numbers have increased. So right now they're still trying to figure out the interaction between humans and the wild animals because most of them are in areas where there's large human population. So I don't think there's a lot of psychological study, though MP is aware and they've got workshops done by Kerala, by Assam, by different Karnataka. Yeah, so all of those trainings have been given to Madhya Pradesh Forest Department. But I am not aware of any behavioral study or psychological behavioral study that has happened on elephants in MP as yet. I guess eventually they might have to do that. So I don't know what the situation is in future, but right now it's still in a state of shock where we are trying to figure out how do we handle such huge mammals in the forest right now.
Yeah, ma'am. So thank you very much for the lecture. So the first question that I have is, you said cattle overgrazing. An increase in overgrazing leads to the herbivore population reducing. So is it to such an extent that there is lack of resources and the herbivore population actually reduces because cattle are consuming it? Is that the case?
So what happens is both sides. So overgrazing is one thing because why does overgrazing happen? Because the fodder land is not available and villagers don't have land to create fodder land. Everything is either under crop or they don't have water resources available. So it could be either of the cases where fodder land is not there. Hence they send them to the forest. Most cattle which are into the forest, they're also not productive. In India, most cattle, I would say about 70 to 80% of the cattle which is there in India is unproductive cattle. Only 20 to 25% cattle probably is productive cattle, and it is due to multiple reasons. It could be religious reasons, it could be reason where when the daughter is married off, they give 2 of the cattle or cows as dowry. So whether it's productive or not is a different question, but they would give off 2 of them as an asset from the mother's side, right? So there are a lot of beliefs and practices that are there within our culture where these practices are there. So if you ask a villager to give up his unproductive cattle, he's not. So there are so many mouths that are already there now. अब उसका क्या करें? So now what they don't want to do is they don't want to make them sit at home and they don't want to do any extra work for them. So they will let them go. So if you go to Bandhavgarh, if you go to any of these parks, all night, all day, they're just there in the forest, right? They just venture into the forest. Panna has a huge problem of free-ranging cattle. Okay, Kuno has a huge problem of free-ranging cattle. What do you do with the cattle? They cannot be caught. None of the gaushalas have capacity to keep them, and if we are hoping that the tiger will kill the cattle, I mean that is what we are all hoping that the stray cattle or the free-ranging cattle is inside the forest is being killed by the tiger. The rate at which it is being killed is very, very slow because of the fact that because of the herbivore cattle population, the herbivores are not in that area. So the tigers are also moving into area where there are more herbivores, wild herbivores I'm talking about, right? So because of the disturbance of cattle, the wild herbivore population moves away from there, so that area gets empty. And then of course the land is grazed, overgrazed in that area. So if there are grasslands in a forest, in a protected area, the grasslands entirely zeroed out of any wild herbivore.
So that means you said that tiger ventures into the human population area and in a way they target cattle.
Yes.
So somewhere this wild herbivore is shifting to another region. But actually they would prefer wild herbivore over the cattle.
They will, but there is a competition there because there are all territories. If you remember, all these tigers have their own territories. So they have to fight another tiger if they have to move their territory. So they can't just switch over saying that मेरे चित्तल वहाँ चले गए so I'll go there and eat. Right? Address change नहीं होता. So they'll have to go and fight with some other tiger first or a tigress first to get that territory. Only then they can capture the herbivore over there. So those logistical dynamics between the tiger social life is also there.
And ma'am, why is human population around such regions very dense? You said that human population is very dense around such sanctuaries or these kind of.
So human population is getting denser because there is no. So these people are not going to go out for jobs really. Again, multiple reasons. Education is not at its best. So they're not going to be officers, IAS officers, IPS officers from that area who will probably go out for jobs, or they're not even going to get postgraduates who will probably go out into cities for jobs. Second is, even if there are graduates, it's very difficult for a person from a rural background to settle into a city life or into an urban life and make it sustainable. So short period of time till we've seen many people moving out, but most of them would come back. And in an event like COVID that happened, almost everybody came back, right, to these villages. So the social dynamics that exist in a village life or in a rural setup, they're very close knit, and people don't want to move out of their houses. But joint family ka jo situation hota hai, they don't want to move out of their families. If they're going out, they get homesick, they'll come back, right? So that situation is there. So the only thing that happens is the population keeps growing. They make more houses, they cut down more forests, more trees, and they build more houses. तो वो कम होने के chances बहुत कम हैं वहाँ. So there is no. So there's always a So from cities, probably people are moving around, going out, coming back. I mean, not like Bombay is going lower and lower, but in village areas it's even more difficult. Reason ही नहीं बाहर जाने का.
Hello madam, thank you. My name is Hari, I'm a PhD student. So I have a question related to the coexistence project as well as the culture. So two things that the diagram you have shown shows about the execution, monitoring and evaluation. So how does the larger concept of coexistence and these projects are connected? Because coexistence is more of a concept, right, rather than the project. So can we actually do the monitoring and evaluation of such coexistence and the execution first thing? And secondly is like how much percentage of the population is state or the NGOs and other department able to work through the cultural angle? For example, deity, the devotee. So how much is that, and is it different, or the cultural angle is different in places where there is less tribals or the cultural angle is less? For example, I studied on Bandipur and Wayanad Tiger Reserves in wildlife sanctuary. So Kerala is mostly known as like culturally different. So in that area the population densities are higher. You can't see people, even though in past 100 years back they might be devoting to the tiger or any other. But the tribal population has been come out of the forest, and in that area the human-wildlife conflict might be higher or lesser. So do you think the cultural continuation of cultural relation with the tiger is also part of the lack of education or coming out of this community, and how much of it is actually helping the conservation or it is making their situation still the same. And secondly, like in Satyamangalam forest, does this earthy community people have been made forest guards and other things like you have shown in the picture. And thirdly, it is that habitat fragmentation of the road ecology angle is very important in Panna Tiger Reserve, right? The road connection. So how much of it is like when you mentioned that there are underpasses made for human travel or for the animal transport, and whether the animals are using it?
So I hope I remember all your questions. So one was coexistence, that's a concept. So coexistence, Hari, right? Okay. Hari, coexistence is definitely a concept. It is measurable to the extent where we document the negative and positive interactions between humans and wildlife. And once you have an understanding of what are the potential or what are the existing negative interactions that happen, if that can be reduced through various measures that we can take, then that is exactly where we will measure the success of coexistence in that particular area. So that is how I would see coexistence to be, instead of just a concept, but also to be implemented in that sense. So like I said, it will be different for different areas. Like for Bandhavgarh, it could be different. For Bombay, it is going to be Sanjay Gandhi National Park will be different. For Satyamangalam, it could be very different. So each of these parks or each of these protected areas probably will have their own list of negative interactions, and if that can be reduced, and it doesn't even need to be a protected area, it could be non-protected area also we're talking about, and negative interactions being reduced. Both sides, the losses should not happen. Eventually, we are trying to reduce the losses from the human side as well as from the wildlife side. If that can happen, then it will go beyond a concept. Then that can be a possibility. Second, you said how much of the cultural understanding is brought into education so that conservation can be done, right? How many NGOs or how many people are working? So it's a very, I would say it's a very tough thing because there is very little established science around it. There is a lot of understanding and knowledge which exists in areas. Like for example, in Maharashtra we have Agoba deity, right? In Kerala we do have Sarpakap, for example, right? So there are examples in different areas where conservation or beliefs, local beliefs have always been part of conservation, or conservation has been part of local beliefs in that sense. How much of it we've been able to use for conservation? I would say there's a lot more scope to do it. We've not probably used it to its fullest extent. We've tried using it. We have a PPT entire presentation on different gods and goddesses who have animals associated with them, and we do that presentation in rural India, and that works very well because they know all of them. They know everybody from Ganga Maiya se leke घड़ियाल पे कौन सवार करता है, उल्लू किसका वाहन है, they know all of it. But if you ask them a scientific question about a leopard, they never go to know. Right? So they understand conservation in the language that we speak to them or in the language that they have been brought up. So in every area probably we need to identify the language in which we have to get the message across to them, whatever works. I think Sam Dam Dandabhed should be the formula. If it works in rural India with working with their local beliefs and practices, we should work. In cities maybe it doesn't work, we have to work with facts and figures. So in different areas we'll have to tweak the design. It can't be one formula works everywhere. We'll have to tweak the design. But yes, to answer your question, there is a lot more scope to imbibe that knowledge and practices into conservation as a message and then work backwards, going back into conservation. And what was the third question? Underpasses is for wild animals. So yes, they do. So there are a lot of camera trap images which have established the animals using the underpass corridor for crossing through, because that's a core that NN7 crosses through Pench National Park. Elephants still haven't reached Pench.
They don't have elephants.
They don't have elephants as yet.
Yeah.
Because I heard that this road ecology concept says that the animals fail to go through any other path which we are given to them rather than the way that they wanted to.
Correct. So we haven't given them. We actually have built over that.
No, whatever. That is.
No, so we haven't made a new path. You're right, but we haven't made a new path for them to go through that path. Now, we ये road बंद है, ये road से जाओ ऐसा नहीं बोल रहे.
So rather than we are going through Upper and they are just going through the same way.
The same route.
No, when you mentioned that for them to go, we have made a niche se or a upper se, right?
Basically, they are called as the underpass, but it's their natural path.
That is their natural
Which has
road.
been built up.
Okay.
We have built,
It's just
we
a
have
bit-
elevated
it's an
the,
elevated corridor,
Okay.
yeah.
and because it's elevated, obviously the arena below is the.
It's called underpass.
I asked
We have
because both designs are in
Correct.
consideration, and there is study saying that the other way, where humans are going on the same path which they used to go, and the animals going the other way is not working out in many countries.
Yeah, so this is, yeah, this is
There
not
are some
that way.
places that they do overpasses, and then for us it's like a tunnel. But then animals are not using it because for them it's unnatural.
It's a new path.
New path.
Here it is not new path. We've left the path as it is. We have built a elevated highway. It's just called underpass, but actually it's a elevated highway. So that's what we've done. Humans को अलग रास्ता देते हैं.
Sorry, asking for last question because I was working for my master's dissertation in Bandipur Tiger Reserve, where the night traffic regulation stopped due to
Right.
road traffic.
Right.
So when everyone says that we can construct an overpass which is 18 kilometers, so one of the observation was it's not possible the way we are constructing our highways. You can't construct and destroy the entire, at least the 10 or the 100-meter buffer on both sides. It will be completely pollution and other issues. So how does this construction happen if at all the underpass and overpass happen? And I heard about Kanapeng's connectivity and this thing, and how much destruction it cost while constructing.
I don't have the figure. Go ahead.
Sorry. Let's say that if that is kind of, we know that it's going to destroy, which is the least destruction. Okay. If the highway would have been built without the elevation, then we don't have a passes, there will be roadkill, like what you were saying in Bandipur also sometimes is that. So it's not a best solution, but with present overall situation with the highway constructions through all the wilderness area, at the moment what we have is I will not call 100% success, maybe 5%, 2% success, is the elevated roads. Because if we don't go for that, nobody will do anything. They will just go through the entire. So there will be destruction happens. See, this whole process is a very, very lengthy process. You are talking about buffer between the roads. So we are fighting and arguing with highway authorities for many years now that whenever you construct a highway, please have a 10, 15 feet grasslands around that instead of tall trees. So the visibility will be more for vehicles, so the animals coming, And today, nobody, they just have exotic trees planted. And so there are many ways the development can be somewhere, the action can be mitigated at a certain level, where probably instead of maybe 50 years remaining, we might live 500 more years. So in the end, there is never going to be 100% success for conservation and wildlife. Probably in our today's world, what we try to reach is those small hopes somewhere, And science is the only way which those small hopes can be presented. So the corridor and underpasses and everything, there is a success with the whole ecological funneling ideas and everything. But there is not much studies have been done in the Indian environmental. All are from Europe and abroad, where they have killed already everything and now they are trying to bring it and call it rewilding and everything. Okay, we already have a lot of existing thing in India, so probably we need to build on those. Okay, so I will say today any elevated road or any tunneling which is done which doesn't disturb the animal, which is probably a 2% success what we have. It's not the solution, no doubt about it, but probably that's the only solution we have.
Until IIT may come up with a new solution for all you know.
GIS will be the solution.
And there is a claim that when we stop forest fire by human intervention, chances of big fire outbreak increases. Like dead dry biomass accumulates there in the fuel.
Is this Indian scenario you're talking about?
And there is a claim globally.
Yeah, that's a global scenario. So in India, the situation is very different. So in India, we also don't have the bamboos or the plants which have the friction which produces fire. We don't have it in India. So Indian scenario is very different. Indian scenario may we don't have that kind of biomass which if left alone in the forest will start with a fire on its own. ऐसा नहीं होता है. So almost, I mean, I'm claiming because whatever I know has been 100%, but फिर भी I'll say 90%, 95% plus of the incidents that we know of are all human made. So I do not know of any incident which is a self-created or a natural fire that has happened in India at least. So it's a different situation in India as against the global situation. So it's a more of a behavioral thing here.
So one more additional point for India is that the biomass building, because of all different seasons of dry, monsoon and everything, it doesn't happen the way it happened in the tropical,
The humidity, moisture is
everywhere. So the biomass converges more faster here. So the threat of a fire is as it is very less in our India. Just one more point which was talking about the cattle which he had asked you. This is the third most biggest threat of all cattle grazing in the forest or anything is the disease transfer within the herbivore population and the cattle. And herbivores do not have immunities against those diseases. So we are actually facing one of the largest challenge. Or maybe someday our whole population of herbivores in that particular area might just go.
all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vidya. So as I will take the honor myself of honoring you. This is a Khadi scarf from Vartha.
Oh wow.
So in line with Sitara's interest in rural areas.
Sure.
Thank you so much. A big round of applause for Vidya. Thank you so much. That was already fascinating talk, great work. The website is there, Vidya is accessible, she stays close by, she does not live in Kana, she lives in Thane, it is Stone's Throw. So if anybody wants to get in touch with her to understand more or want to work with them, I think it's always going to be possible. Her colleagues are here, Kedar is there, Gaurav is here. Kedar has spoken twice on our seminars. He works on snakes and she mentioned his work, so they're all there. So please catch them if you're interested in working.
In fact, one of the things that we had long back approached in IIT was to figure out if they could have mechanisms that can deter wild animals from entering the crops, because that seems to be one of the biggest issues in today's world, not only for the farmers but also for wildlife. So I don't know if anybody is interested, if anybody wants to experiment. I know there have been a lot of experiments with sounds, with acoustics that have already happened in the past. But we'll be more than happy to work with anyone who is interested to experiment these things. Field is available, ground is available, we have ground coordinators, we have villagers, we have fields with crops. So let us know if any of you would be interested in doing that.
Actually, like she is saying, one of the biggest challenges in rural India is crop damage. And runs into hundreds and thousands of crores worth of damage. Crop, property, life, like she's been saying. So there's huge potential for intervention.
So
And
one elephant just entering the field and
No, even
an
Elephant, just one single, forget about a herd. One elephant entering into a field, 2-3 acres of land, he can just like trample down just by walking. If there are 15 elephants in a herd and all they have to do is just cross from here to there and there's a highway. Like the entire thing is just gone. Okay. So technology, we believe that can really help and change this and achieve that coexistence that we are talking now. Currently it is a dialogue, right? Now we are stuck into a phase where we know what most of the problems are and there might be a solution, but that solution needs this technological bridge, which includes even say civil technology, electronic technology, GPS, GIS technology, and I think collectively here there's enough of ideas that can come out of it. So yeah, looking forward.
Just a contrast to this whole cooperating with the big issue with farmers, particularly with the wildlife and herbivores. But when we talk about culture, beliefs and faith, our farmers accept 30% damage with rats. No complaint is made. But the 10% damage to wildlife is a huge issue in our country. Right? So when we talk about culture, beliefs, faith, or acceptance, we need to also see how do we increase that acceptance of wildlife. Probably a crop damage by wildlife was within the farmers also a lot. Because I know, because I have worked with the whole rat industry and for many years into the crop damage. 30% crops in India is damaged by rats. You see any news anywhere? That's what the contrast this country is.
Probably because of Mushik Vahan.
So I have a small question. If we have saved all the entire area through the IITs or elephant center, is there enough food for these animals to eat?
Which animals?
Like we have stopped the crop any of the wild animals.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, enough.
So the cycle is. So the food cycle is mostly more the food availability, the numbers will keep increasing, and it's the same with, especially in urban context, we can talk about the same with pigeons, with rats, with all of those. More the food availability, more the numbers will increase. Then we are talking about utne numbers ke liye khana milta hai kya? So same will be the story with wildlife also, and the population control happens within that area in a very natural way. Basically, jitna food available hai utne survive honge. So that whole formula will start working when we are not injecting or introducing external food sources to the wild population.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot.